Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I talk to my guests about their inner side and how their internal changes have led to their outer success stories. We talk about the failures, spirituality and sometimes the painful experiences that have made them the unique individuals they are today. The main aim being for us to learn from and be inspired by them for our own lives. So, if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, do keep listening. And please remember to hit subscribe on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss an episode. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the founder and Chief Empowerment Officer of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that put people and planet before profit. In 2015, we became one of the first B Corps in the UK, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I'm passionate about changing the world for better and realised many years ago that to do this, we must also change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit has to be mirrored by an inner change, and that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
My parents didn't necessarily always give me the easy path as well. I took a year out after school, and I remember my mum and dad, they made me pay rent. And when I first started up Pip and Nut, or when I first started, I kind of went to them for a small kind of $5,000 loan, and my dad is just to kind of paint a picture of kind of what they're like. But my dad agreed to the loan but put interest on it and made sure I paid it back in 3 years.
That is not normal. My guest today is Pip Murray. Pip, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thank you for having me.
Pip is the founder and CEO of Pip and Nut, an award-winning food brand that launched in January 2015. Over the last 10 years, she's been shaking up the food and drink sector with her range of all-natural, sustainably minded, and most importantly, delicious nut butters and snacks. Pip and Nut is listed in all the major retailers in the UK, and is the number 2 and fastest growing nut butter brand in the UK. Pip and Nut is a certified carbon neutral business since 2021 and a proud B Corp since 2019, meaning that they are focused on positively impacting people and the planet as they grow. Amongst other accolades, Pip was listed as one of London's most influential people in the Evening Standard and is a Forbes 30 Under 30 alumni. Two other facts about Pip are that, strangely, she lived in a shed for 3 months when she was starting at the business, and bizarrely, her partner in life, not the business, is allergic to peanuts, which I found quite extraordinary. And doesn't that make life a bit difficult at home?
Spicy.
It means you can't bring any samples home, does it mean? Or
Thankfully,
what?
he can eat almond butter or almonds.
Oh,
so
just the peanuts.
He's saved by that, and it's not EpiPen allergic. But I met him after I set up the business, and it was an interesting conversation when he told me that. Almost a deal breaker. Yeah,
I wonder if he would have set up the business if you were with him before.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But no, it's a funny story, and it's he's always actually quite annoyed by the fact he can't try half of our product range, so he's a bit resentful of it.
And tell me about the shed. It seems slightly extreme. Was that to save money or what?
It's one of those startup stories that I often bury, if I'm honest, Paul. But unfortunately, there's an annoying Telegraph article if you Google my name that comes up. But no, it was when I was very much in startup mode when I was sort of setting up the business. So before I launched, a mentor of mine had fired off this competition to me, and she was like, "Have you considered entering this? It's a startup competition. It's designed to give you a bit of PR, but also gives you desk space for free, but also rent free in London." So bear in mind at this time I was 24, 25. I'd racked up quite a number of credit cards. I was still working part-time at my job at the Science Museum before I'd launched the business. And I thought, you know what, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And the catch being, if you won the competition, then the rent-free place was a shed which is in the back garden of a company called Escape the City's head office.
Oh yeah, I know them.
So it was possibly the most random thing I've ever done in my life.
It must have been a nice shed.
It was quite nice. Yeah,
not like my shed in the garden.
Yeah, it wasn't no cobwebs. It was brand new. And yeah, you could go into there their head office, which is actually this lovely building. But I did feel like a feral cat for the whole summer. And yeah, it was basically a 3-month kind of runway that I had to kind of go full time. I raised my first like crowd cube raise when I was in the shed. So I raised about £100,000. And effectively that enabled me to launch the business. So it gave me my runway. I guess some people move in with their parents. I chose to move into a shed, which I don't know if that says something about me or my parents.
Your parents might have something to say about that. But yeah. So we'll talk about your parents, because the other thing I found out about was that your mum went back to work when you were 12, and then you were responsible for doing all the cooking at home, which, again, not that normal, I don't think. I don't think my mum would have done that. So what was going on there?
Yeah, it was funny that, because at the time I didn't even think twice about it, actually. But my mum... So I've got 3 older sisters. I'm the youngest. And my mum looked after us when we were little. And when I was 12 and my eldest sister was 18, she decided to go back to nursing. And I think at the time, big household, 4 demanding children. I think she was just like threw in the towel when it came to cooking and decided to kind of give it over to me and my sisters to cook. And it was about the time where like Jamie Oliver was like really having his renaissance. So I remember being like, this is brilliant. I get to like have full reign of the kitchen and just cracked open the recipe books and all of that. The bill every week for the shopping bill was massive, because we'd order like tuna steaks to, I'd make a chocolate tart or whatever to accompany my main meal and stuff. But yeah, it was fantastic. It really I think it was the real seed of my passion for food was really, really started at that point.
Presumably your other sisters were contributing too. It wasn't just down to you.
Yeah, I had Tuesday night.
Okay.
So yeah, we had one night of the week, and then my dad did one night, and then my mum did the rest.
Right, okay.
That's so yeah, it was fair, but it was it was quite formative, I think, actually.
Must have been some disasters in there, mustn't there, when you were 12? I don't think I could have done that when I was 12.
Yeah, ask my mum. I think she'll have the memories.
Ask your sisters. So, I mean, I think is your mum was a doctor, or both of your mum and dad?
So my dad was a doctor, GP, and then my mum was a nurse, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And it is, I mean, the podcast has only been going a couple of series, but I've had a disproportionate number of people from medical families, none of whom are medical, by the way. I'm one, too. 2 other of my guests in series 1 were from medical families. I'm now thinking, does this breed entrepreneurship coming from a medical family? And I don't know the answer to the question, but I do think it's similar to your story there. They were so busy with their job. We were pretty much doing what we wanted when we grew up, and they didn't have a clue where it was. I mean, times were different back then, and we were roaming the streets probably, but I do wonder whether it breeds a level of independence when maybe mum and dad are maybe not at home as much as they might be. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think there's something in that. I also think just being the youngest, I don't want to play the violin about being the youngest and being forgotten, but I definitely think that also plays a little bit into sort of being quite independent and sort of self-starting in that sense. But I don't know, I also think there, business wasn't really ever something that I considered. I don't know about you, where it came from, but I definitely think it has shaped the way that I've thought about business. I always thought I'd work in like the charity sector or the creative arts, which is where I ended up after university. I think there was always something in me that, I felt like I needed to help in some way. I mean, all my dinner table stories when I was younger was my dad talking about, none of the confidential stuff, but like, stuff about what was happening in the surgery, or my mum was talking about patients, and that sense of like, they were helping people. And I think that did shape my view of like what work was, and that it wasn't there just to be all about, self-serving and ego driven. There is an element of like, you're there to help other people. So, but they also are, talk to a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, they'll be the busiest people that you speak to. And they are, any friends of mine that are in those careers are the hardest working people I know.
Yes.
So I think there's also something about work ethic that comes into it, which I think business, you still need a strong work ethic, right? Especially when you start up.
And I think you're right. They are serving other people, and there's probably a misperception, but most people perceive the business community as probably serving themselves. Mm-hmm. And it was going to get onto this a bit later, but we'll do it now. The thing I found out about you from talking to some people that work with you is that it was very, very clear that you're not in it for the money, that you're in it for doing a good thing, and philanthropy, difficult word to say. But yeah, and I think most people's misperception about business is that entrepreneurs are just basically in it to make loads of money and get out and sit on a beach in the Caribbean. But I'm certainly not like that, and it's very clear you're not. But I don't think most entrepreneurs I know, they're primarily not, the money's a side thing. So tell me a bit more about your inner motivation for starting a business.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing about running a business is the fact that, if you're able to get it to a certain level of success, the whatever success means, but the good you can do with it, the platform that you have is such a powerful thing. It's far greater than just as an individual what you can achieve, I don't know, whatever sort of causes or things are, personally you affect you. But yeah, for me, I find it incredibly empowering because it gives you this great vehicle to be able to then kind of have an impact on the society around you, the world around you. That really motivates me. In fact, the bigger we get, for me, that I get really excited because it allows you to, flex a little bit more in terms of that people, planet, profit piece and really put them on equal footing. I guess the thing that why the inner motivation, I just think that business has a unique position to be able to affect society. God, at the moment, from a political standpoint, it's a little bit head in hands. It's quite depressing, and therefore, actually, business, which can be quite agile, it can move quite quickly. I actually find that quite an exciting place and role that we as entrepreneurs and business owners have to be able to do good in the world. So I think that for me again is a big part of why I love business in that sense.
But how did you discover that? Because when I was at school, the people, very much like we just said, the people who wanted to help people became doctors, teachers. The people that, the greedy ones went into business. And again, it's not right and it's a misperception. But how did you discover that business could be a way of making change in the world positively rather than just making money?
Yeah, definitely. At school, I never really thought about business because I didn't think that it was something, to your point, it was always, you either become a teacher or you become an investment banker. It felt like there weren't that, I didn't really know much about the middle territory of where I guess sit at the moment. And so for a very, very long time, I didn't really pursue business or even think it was a route for me. I guess what really kind of started to get me motivated, I started my career in I guess you'd call it the charity sector, but it's the creative arts, so it's not-for-profits. So I worked at different museums and art centres, and I guess I sometimes found them a little bit slow-paced. I am quite independent and determined and quite like forging my own path, and sometimes I found that those sort of organisations quite slow. And actually, when I looked into kind of the world of food and started kind of engaging a little bit more in kind of food industry, I just started to spot businesses and brands that were doing some incredible products, making some really wonderful impact on their consumers' lives, but also going that bit further. So I think for me, it was only really kind of just observing and being quite kind of, I guess, being a bit frustrated in my kind of where I was at. I was in my 20s, so I was also not really sure where I wanted to go, but also kind of started to spot actually there were different ways of being able to have an impact than just necessarily choosing to go into kind of that charity sector, if you like.
That is young, isn't it? I think a lot of people, some of my kids are older than mid-20s now, but there's a sense, I think, young people, sounding really old saying that, it seems to take people a long time to work out what they want to do with their lives. So it might be helpful for you to just say a bit more about that. And how did you find out this is what I'm meant to be doing? Because you seem to me to be a person that's very aligned with everything you're doing. It's taken me 40 years to get there. I do feel aligned now for the last 10 years. But for 30 years of my adult life, I didn't. So it would be helpful to work out how you got to that place. Was it luck, or was it just being in the right place at the right time, or was there a bit more to it than that?
What I would say is I guess Pip Murray has been my exploration of that. So I think my perspective on the business world 10 years into the journey is very different from what I thought it was when I first started. That's not to say that I didn't believe that Pip could be a vehicle for good, but I didn't think I was fully aware of like how much influence you could have as your business scaled. So yeah, I was quite young when I started up the business. I was more focused at the time, I think, more on creating a great product and delivering a great, experience for consumers. And I believed in kind of making products more naturally. I was a marathon runner. I was really interested in health, and I liked kind of more natural foods, and believed that actually most products didn't need to contain like emulsifiers and palm oils and all of that. So it was quite a kind of, I would say at that early couple of years, a bit of a one-dimensional lens of looking at how as a business you could do good. And I think it was really only as the business started to grow that I kind of saw that there were different models of doing business and understood more about the B Corp movement, that I actually started, that for me was more of the light bulb moment actually in doing the business and then also becoming a B Corp. I was like, oh my God, there's this a complete opportunity for us to be, as a community of businesses, to actually look at how we can sort of change the system, if you like, that we operate in. So I think Pip has been my education. Some people I think might, have a bit more life experience and then come up with their business, and then that's, more kind of part of maybe their initial gestational idea, whereas mine, I think, has really emerged, I guess, over the course of doing what I've done for the last 10 years.
But it tapped into your, what seemed to be very strong values. So where did those values come from? Presumably mum and dad to some degree, but you seem to be a person that's got strong values and stick to them. Do you have any idea on how come?
Yeah, I mean, I think my sisters and my mum and dad have been pretty formative, I think, in terms of my sort of value set. I think from a really young age, sort of working hard, and has been a big work ethic of mine, something that my parents particularly have instilled on me. And back to the point I mentioned earlier, I guess seeing them do jobs that I thought were really good, like that they really did help other people, and I think that has hugely shaped who I am. I think sometimes that my parents didn't necessarily always give me the easy path as well. Like, I took a year out after school, and I remember my mum and dad, they made me pay rent. And when I first started up Pip and Nut, or when I first started, I kind of went to them for a small kind of $5,000 loan, and my dad, it's just to kind of paint a picture of kind of what they were like, but my dad agreed to the loan but put interest on it, and they made sure I paid it back in 3 years.
That is not normal.
So I guess it sort of slightly gives you a bit of a thread of, I guess, what sort of shaped me a little bit in terms of that ethic, but also kind of standing on my own 2 feet and, making sort of, I guess, being in charge of my own kind of agenda and actions and kind of path, if you like.
I do like that. I think there is a balance somewhere, but I think parents that make life too easy for their kids aren't doing them any favours. I wonder what you'll be like with your child when they're a bit older.
The final thing to add, I guess, as it's coming at me, so I'm dyslexic as well. So and actually 2 of my older sisters are also dyslexic. And a bit back to kind of that, kind of what shaped me, I definitely think that's been a really formative part of like me and how I see the world. There's a kind of creative side to me, I think, that my dyslexic brain definitely brings. I love that kind of problem solving side of things. But also that kind of element of that. One of my earliest memories is sitting in my classroom after trying really hard on a spelling test and getting all of the answers wrong, and it being humiliating and upsetting, and but equally like being furious with it. And so I also think there's a bit about like that tenacity that you get when you have dyslexia or any other kind of, I guess, neurodiversity in that respect. But I hated the fact I was dyslexic. I hated being different, and I hated the fact that I had to like work extra hard to get the same results. But it definitely drove me and has shaped, I guess, who I am.
Well, it's a superpower, isn't it, now?
Yeah.
I presume you look at it in a different way.
Yeah.
Now. I don't know what the stats are, but a ridiculously high percentage of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, aren't they? Do you know the stats on that?
I don't. I know 1 in 5 people nationally have some sort of neurodiversity. I don't know.
Yeah, and also ADHD, which I'm bordering on that. But
Yeah.
I haven't been diagnosed, but there's also a high proportion of entrepreneurs that are ADHD.
Yeah,
Can't
restless.
Exactly. Yeah, get bored by details. So need to start something new. But let's talk a bit about, because you ended up going into theatre, creative arts. Where did the light bulb come from that's made you switch into business? Into
food and drink. Like I said, I think nothing is ever just one light bulb, I don't think, or at least it wasn't for me. Food had been a formative part of my upbringing. I loved it. I went to uni in London and stayed ever since. And at that time, like markets were really booming. The food truck scene was just like really getting up and coming out in London. And I just loved it. I remember, it would be where I still do, where I spend all my money is in food. And I loved the creativity that people had in those markets. I also love the fact that whenever you kind of dug a little bit deeper into a lot of the stories, whether it was someone at a market stall or someone selling into like Whole Foods, whatever, a lot of the time people were not from a food and drink background. There are a few people that particularly inspired me early days when I was sort of initially started to have a bit of a spark of the idea. And I love the fact that actually it didn't seem an industry that you necessarily had to have the experience in, at least to start something up. But yeah, the food scene in London was really awesome. And I remember just thinking, I'd love to be in this somehow, even though I have absolutely zero qualifications. I guess I landed on nut butter because I am a massive fan of it. I hand on heart, eat our products still every single day. I am a proper peanut butter addict. It is one of those Marmite products, I think, which people either love or hate. I love the stuff. And yeah, I fell in love with it. I just love the simplicity of the product. But back then, a lot of the products I could get my hands on either had palm oil in, or they were quite processed. There wasn't much in the way of innovation. There was no brand doing it particularly well. And I just thought, there's just something in this product that I loved the idea behind it. And I remember just thinking, if I don't do this, someone else will. There's definitely a gap in this really like boring, dusty category to do it so much better. And I loved that kind of little gap, I guess, that I saw that I kind of exploited.
So a lot of people love food, and a lot of people would love to have a business in food. Most people don't start a business in food. So there's an aspect of confidence here that, particularly as you did it at quite a young age, because a lot of people that start food businesses are older than you. That confidence, where did that come from? Do you have any idea?
It's funny. Sometimes I almost don't really recognise myself because I almost don't know how I did it as well in terms of why I just started. In some ways, like my mum had been she'd been at the she's only just given it up now at the Women's Institute. So I actually grew up with her, like making chutneys and marmalades in our kitchen growing up. So in lots of ways, like making a food product, I used to help her out at market stalls for her and stuff. So in some ways, I think I'd seen it a little bit, role models, even though it was sort of not really a brand. It was like just selling nice products, I guess, at a weekly market. So there was a bit of me just like, what's the worst that can happen if you just give it a go at a market stall, which is how I started initially. I kind of made them in my kitchen and took them to Maltby Street in London at the weekend. So I think there was a bit of like, if I just start small, see where it takes me and just pull on the thread a bit before overly committing that this is going to be this all singing, all dancing brand. I do think if you sometimes take out the kind of pressure that you've got to get it all perfect and polished and it's got to be this incredible retail ready product that you get out the door straight away, that can give you a bit of a freedom to just start.
And were you earning money in another way at that time?
So I was part-time in my job at the Science Museum. I was a theatre producer at the time, and then in the weekends on a Friday I'd make the products in like a commercial kitchen, and then Saturday I'd take them down to markets, and then Sunday as well. So I kind of made it work. And then there was I gave it enough of a go that I remember every week at the markets I'd sell out. I'd make about 300 jars at a time. And I mean, Maltby Street, it's a busy market, but every week they'd go. And there was just something. I used to get like people tweeting me at that time. I'd had like a basic Instagram and Twitter and stuff, or X, Twitter back then.
Yeah.
And and I loved it. I just loved the immediate feedback that I got. And I think sometimes, again, getting that feedback early, I mean, sometimes it can make you stop, because if it's negative, then you know you shouldn't carry on. But for me, it was only positive. And so, yeah, it was basically like peeling back an onion. The more I kind of peeled back about what the food industry was whilst kind of doing markets as a bit of a test, I was like, I just think this is something I really can't not go for. So, yeah, market stores are an easy entry point, aren't they? But there's obviously a point where you have to like say, right, am I going to scale this up and like invest in manufacturing and all of that?
And leave your job.
Your
part-time job. So what triggered that decision?
Well, I pretty much got the product ready to go and then I won the shed competition.
Right.
And
so
then
the shed did it.
That gave me the whatever comfort blanket or cushion, I guess, to give it a go for 3 months. But also, I had pretty much got it as far as I could before I like needed to kind of give it.
Because there's two schools of thought on this, isn't there? And I don't know where I stand on. There's people that de-risk the start of a business by having another income, and then there's people who go all in and they've got to make it work. Yeah. Otherwise, they're finished. What if you? I mean, I guess you probably do a bit of mentoring with other people. Where do you advise people on that?
I mean, I would definitely go in the former. Like, I think starting a business up is stressful enough as it is, let alone if you've got a runway that's slowly, draining the bank. It takes always double the amount of time you think it is to start something up. So there's no point quitting your job and just what you're also doing at that time. You know, you're just kind of a busy fool because starting something up isn't so complex. You're not always needing to work on it full time when you're in that sort of figuring out the supply chain and all of that. So yeah, I'm like, stretch it as far as you go, and then take the leap. The benefit, I guess, when you start something up when you're younger is that you've got no overheads. You've got very little in the way of like dependents or, no mortgage or, all of that. So in lots of ways, for me, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I just have to get another job again and get back on the climbing the ladder. So I feel like, again, it's how you frame things a lot of the time in your mind, I think, is kind of key when you're trying to think about how much risk am I willing to take at any given point. But yeah, I would be one to advocate for like stretch yourself and then at some point pull the plug, but not at the beginning.
There's a high degree. I mean, I think I had 3 kids when I started.
Yeah, it's
Cotswold
tough.
Fair. So the motivation was feeding them.
Yes.
But I thought with the food business, if it really goes wrong, we have some food.
Yeah, it's useful.
Not sure how much of a healthy diet it would have been with jam and meringues and coffee were the first 3 products we had. But I want to talk to you a bit about the emotional side because, I think you're very much coming across as a person that's set an intention to do business in a good way. And how much does the emotional side come into it? For me, just to give you a bit of time to think, I definitely knew it was the right thing to do at the beginning, and then we fell away from it. And for us, for me, when we became a B Corp in 2015, it was fantastic. Here are a group of people actually that are doing what I wanted to do at the beginning that I'd basically lost courage to do, and that gave me the energy and courage to start doing it again. And my journey since then has been much more, it's not just a good thing to do, but it's motivated by, well, I think we're allowed to use this word in business these days, love and compassion for others. And the best thing about running the business now is the change we can make in other people, whether they're here or in Africa and various projects. So for you, how much of an emotional content is there with what you're doing in the doing good side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that drives me for sure. I completely connect with what you just said there around when you found that kind of movement and then what it therefore made you realize what you could do with your business. So exactly the same. I mean, I think business is a bit of you're constantly moving from head into heart. And I think as the founder of the business, you need to pull on the heart more than anyone else, because who else is going to inject that level of energy and love, passion for what your brand could do in consumers' lives. You're the one that's going to have to be more bold than anyone else in terms of trying to challenge us in terms of, how far we go on sustainability as an example. It was interesting. I mean, sustainability is a big part of like what we talk about at board, for instance. And I find it a really interesting topic around like how much should you be investing in sort of sustainability? Where do you draw the line? And there is no rule of thumb in terms of how much you should, invest in projects that help. For instance, we're working on some regenerative agriculture projects in sort of peanuts at the moment. And we're looking at other things to do with almonds. It's like there is no kind of rule of thumb in terms of how much you should commit in terms of finances to support that, or how deep you go when it comes to ethical sourcing on your cocoa. As an example, we buy through Tony's Open Chain. That's where the heart bit comes in, because logically some of this stuff doesn't make complete sense if you were taking a completely rational, profit-driven mindset. You'd be thinking, do it the simplest way you can from A to B. But actually what makes it so interesting and rewarding is when you pull on the heart a bit more and make things a bit more harder for yourself. So in our instances, for instance, when we develop products, we can't use a load of ingredients that a lot of food brands would when it comes to sourcing our nuts or, our key ingredients like our cocoa or our oats. Like we have to make sure that they are sustainably sourced, that we've got third-party verified ingredients, that we are confident that there are no issues from a labour or a environmental point of view. So in some ways, almost like the obstacle's the way, to use that phrase. Like the harder you make it for yourself, actually, the more rewarding it is. And generally the better it is for your consumers, because you can be very lazy in business, I think, if you want to be. But that doesn't really give you that much reward, because to your point, like... Yeah.
So if you're making a hard decision in the boardroom, do you get pushback from your investors? Because, there's sometimes like you just said, the mind might say one thing, the heart might say another.
Yeah.
So how does that conflict resolve itself?
I think it normally comes back to the consumer, isn't it? If you can ground it in a consumer-driven decision and one that also then comes back to purpose, then I think it normally resolves the argument. So if it's like a complete passion point of mine and it's not connected to our consumers enough, then I think then sometimes that does get resolved. But there are sort of challenges. Like, for instance, we moved all of our products from plastic to glass, all of our jars, rather. It was quite an expensive move, a fair bit of CapEx. I felt like it was the right thing to do from a brand point of view, both from a quality, but also sustainably. They're easier to recycle, etc., and reuse. And I think it's sort of in the boardroom, you do have to make sure that you are reflecting the commercial aspects of it. If you didn't, then you just get sent back out again. Because
that did reduce your gross profit, didn't it? That decision. Yeah,
it did. Yeah, and it's it took a bit of time to kind of recover that. But I think, like a lot of things, it's like the short and the long term. Like, when do you look at short term things that you need to kind of sort out versus, like in that instance, it was a long term investment that we knew that we needed to do at some point, and therefore it was worth it. I think the second point I'd say on that is that you have to make sure you've got the right board members.
That's pretty important.
Yeah. I mean, as I'm sure it's the same for you, as part of B Corp, you have to change your articles and make sure that, they embed the fact that you're not just there to be governed by, shareholders. It's about all stakeholders and everyone signing up to that principle. So I think there is a bit of a litmus test generally. So I'm not saying that my board members are rolling over every time, I'm saying that we should invest in X, Y, or Z when it comes to sustainability, but they get it, I think, probably more than most in the financial world would. And therefore, I think there is a understanding that Pip and Nut will only thrive if we are, in some way making sure that we're delivering on our purpose.
So do you get emotional in those conversations then? How much is emotion permitted at Pip and Nut?
I think it probably comes out as a bit, sometimes I can get a bit fiery, I think probably is, which is just another form of emotion. So I'm not there crying my eyes out, but I will...
No, someone said they'd only ever seen you cry once, actually.
Yeah, I'm not a big crier, but I do get bloody belligerent about stuff. And I think that's just another way of channeling out, like, what I think is like the right thing to do. So yeah, they can get heated, but equally I think it's good to have a bit of challenge sometimes, because I mean, I guess B Corp, it is people, planet, profit. You do need to make sure you survive as a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're being a bit too one-dimensional on any of those threads, then you end up just in a not too great place. So in some ways, I'm happy to be challenged, and then it really tests your the view that you have, maybe, that coming into the room. That's the reason why you have a board, I guess.
Yeah, I think if there's huge convergence happening, then nothing emerges. You've got to have some level of divergence for things to emerge in the cracks.
Yeah.
So I think a level of divergence, as long as it's done in a good way, is great.
Yeah.
It's good to be challenged.
Yeah.
And but as long as everyone's happy with the end decision, I'm gonna stick with it and back everyone up, even if I did disagree with it. Yeah. I think a level of that is a healthy thing. And 100%. I think sometimes we think it's not. Some people get a bit threatened. We also have arguments in our leadership
Debates.
meetings. Yeah, well, okay, arguments. But I think we're quite good at coming to a decision that everyone's happy with in the end.
Yeah, and being
it's taken a while. I don't think I was. I probably got better at. I've still got a way to go, I'm sure, but I think I got better at letting other voices rather than railroading stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes a decision needs to be made, and at the end of the day, it's got to be me, and in your case, it's got to be you, I guess.
Yeah, and actually, you can sometimes do a bit. You can sometimes go too far the other end and be a bit too much consensus, and actually people want you to get to a decision,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's frustrating otherwise.
So how would you, you've been 10 years anniversary this year.
It was in January,
Yeah. How have you changed in that 10 years?
Oh God, I almost get a bit cringy actually when I think about myself when I first started the business. I was just a kid. So yeah, I feel like I've grown up a huge amount. Not just because I think, I've had my own kid now. So that,
yeah, you've got to grow up. When you
sort of changes you, that, doesn't it? I think that's life. How have I changed? I've become a lot more balanced, I think. I think when I first started, which I think is normal, I rid that roller coaster, everything I felt like would knock me left, right and centre. I would react a lot more, I think, in terms of when something went wrong or right, either way. And I don't know if that's just the stage and phase when you're in the first few years. It is like you're firefighting and you're afraid of what might happen. Whereas now I feel like I'm more rational and a bit more weathered is probably the word I'd use. And sometimes I kind of get a bit of nostalgia too. I think the kind of sparkle that you have at the start, because everything's a possibility. Whereas now you kind of have a little bit more of a, like I said, rational approach to things, which I don't think is a bad thing, but it does sometimes mean that you lose that kind of perhaps naivety that you had at the start.
Do you enjoy it more now or in 2015?
I by far enjoy it more now. Like the depths and of what you can do with your brand now is far more interesting than. I love the creative side at the beginning. You are literally building it brick by brick, and I'm a doer. Really love doing stuff and get a lot of satisfaction day to day if I feel like I've achieved something every day. Having said that, we're going, for instance, Pip and Up, we're going kind of multi-category now, and we're doing some international work, and we're going much deeper into our supply chain, really thinking about how could we go further when it comes to charitable giving. And these sort of things you can really only do when you have a business that's kind of healthier, and you can start to kind of really stretch yourself. And leadership, I think, has been something that's taken me a long time to get comfortable with. I started the business and I didn't even think that at some point I'd have to run a team. I just loved the product, thought I would crack on and do it. And I think it's taken me a while to kind of feel like a bit more grounded in what a leader is and what kind of leader I am. Whereas now I feel more comfortable there. I think you're always on a bit of a journey on that path, but I enjoy leading the team now, whereas I think probably if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have said I find that bit probably the worst bit of it all, whereas that I'm enjoying more and more.
Yeah, well, you're probably better at most things than I realised quite early, and I wasn't very good at much, but I was quite good at leading the team. But it was much better to get better people in to do stuff. that I was rubbish at.
Yeah.
But,
I don't believe that for 1 minute, but
look, I'm a nice guy and people like working for me, but in terms of actually having skills, I don't think I have very much at all. But anyway, let's move on from me. Fun. We touched on that. You sound like you're someone that has a lot of fun in the business.
Yeah.
How do you permeate that across the organisation?
Yeah, I mean, Pip and Us, it's a really playful, it's a very emotive brand. We've got a squirrel in our brand, you can have a lot of fun with that as a...
You're going to say you got a squirrel in the office.
I mean, we should. We do have a giant cutout squirrel, but not actually real life. Yeah, we have a lot of fun because we, as a brand, there's a lot of creative freedom to do that, from a tone of voice right the way through. We just did a big advertising campaign in January and we had giant squirrels literally on the tubes and on bus sides, leaping here, there and everywhere. And it's quite frankly a bit ridiculous if you look at some of our conversations about whether that squirrel has fluffy enough tail or a cute enough nose. Like, it's silly. It really is. And I think that kind of silliness we try and embrace within Pip and Nut. And I think that was what kind of makes it fun. If you get inside our little bubble in the nest over in Shoreditch, hopefully you can feel it when you walk in.
This marketing campaign sounds more fun than one I did hear about, probably from earlier days when you had to lie in a bath of peanuts.
Yes, that was one of my least favourite photo shoots from the Daily Mail.
I heard. It would be the Mail, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. Always. And also it's tragic. You'll do anything for a bit of PR, even if it's the Daily Mail. I like to think I'm a bit more choiceful in terms of learnings going forwards, but you never know. If someone asked me to do it for, I don't know, maybe I'd do it again. But yeah, I have to. I think when you're a challenger brand, and it doesn't matter what size of business you are, you can be a challenger brand. And as we grow, trying to embrace that kind of sense of taking a leap, being bold, being brave, and with that, sometimes not taking yourself so seriously, I think is an important part of it. I read this piece of this article on LinkedIn the other day, which was talking about how if you are a conventional product like peanut butter it's something that most people eat every day, then you have to be a bit weird to get noticed. And if you've got an unconventional product, then you have to be a bit more normal to get understood. So we need to be a bit weirder if we're going to get any kind of cut through in the world. So I'm trying to encourage my team to embrace that side of them, try and think a bit differently, because it will get you noticed. It's a hard place to be sometimes in FMCG.
I want to talk a bit about, if you don't mind, because you wrote a great post on, I think it probably was International Women's Day, we're recording this a couple of days later, about being a mum and an entrepreneur, because this probably doesn't get talked about enough. And actually, I saw your post and Amelia from Bold Bean, who isn't a mum yet, but she wrote a similar post. Tell me the challenges and the joys of being both.
Yeah, I think it's if you're running the business day to day, and I don't have a co-founder, so but I've got a brilliant team. Obviously, it's not just me, but great senior team. I think that even the decision at what point do you choose to have a family, if you're lucky enough to have one, it's quite a big one in your mind. Partly because you feel a lot of pressure to kind of, from, not that my investors ever gave pressure to me, but you feel it. You feel like if you start to have a family, you're gonna, what will that mean for you in terms of your lifestyle and your ability to be able to kind of still lean in and run the business. And there's a physical thing to it as well. There's a period of time that you need to, go and have the kid, and and that takes you away from the business. So there's a lot of anxiety, I think, about when's the right time.
Yeah.
But then I think that's kind of any female who has a career that they're wanting to pursue at the same time as have a family. I think that's a real tension. But I think a lot of women, having spoken to other female business owners and leaders, it's quite an agonizing decision, even though it's an incredibly positive one from a personal point of view. And I felt quite self-conscious of it, actually, when I decided, when I got pregnant. I was like, when do I tell my team? It felt like a really big decision. And my only bit of advice is that I think it sometimes seems bigger in your mind than it does in everyone else's. And it's relatively, even just when you're pregnant, it's 9 months, it's not that long. So to some extent, don't worry too much. Having said that, it is a big juggle. And I think, my partner took the majority of the parental leave actually whilst so we did share parental leave. And I think, even that is quite tough on, that was hard for him in a world that most people, it's more the women that takes the majority of maternity leave. And, there's things that and that's the way we decide to do it, by the way. It's not necessarily you have to do it if you run a business. But yeah, when you follow a slightly more unconventional path, even going back to work a bit sooner than probably a lot of women do in the UK.
How long did you have off?
I had sort of 6 weeks fully out, and then I started to phase back in after that, but a few hours a day, and then built up to 3 days and 4 days and 5 days, and did that over sort of 6 months. So it's sort of staged and phased, and I was still running the business with my senior team, obviously. So yeah, I mean, it feels hard because you're fighting up against or hitting up against sort of, I guess, conventions that, even when people don't mean it, they might say things about, whether you feel bad about not being at home. And even when someone asks you something like that, it makes you feel like you should feel bad or whatever. It triggers things in your mind. So, but I think you've got to see it in the bigger picture, really. And, being a working mum, I think, is a really powerful thing for your children. Yeah. I'm a working parent, full stop, right? And
I think, I don't know, but I guess that time when you weren't there, people step up anyway. And it's, I've always, it's totally different from that, but I've always had long holidays. Yeah. As a business growth strategy, because right from the beginning, you go away, other people have to do stuff that you're doing. And actually, they do. And coming back to me, they did a better job than me anyway. Yeah. So you can carry on doing that now I'm back. And I guess it was the same for you.
Completely the same. Yeah, you actually start to focus on the things that you probably should be doing as opposed to the things that you shouldn't. So anything that's a bit of a circuit breaker is actually sometimes a kind of good thing. Yeah.
It's so easy, isn't it, to get even stuff you've passed on. Someone maybe leaves, and you get. This happened to me last year actually, and I took a holiday to. Hang on a minute. I counted 12 things I shouldn't be doing. Yeah. So when I was away on holiday, I bought 12 batons, athletics, and I gave the batons to some people got 2 different people when I came back. So I'm not doing this anymore.
I'm going to steal that. I am taking that. It is. I think it's, and it's great for everyone. Like people feel like you trust them. And I think trust is a big part of like, when you hand over that baton, like it actually helps build your team in a more resilient way. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think I guess the IWD post is all about, I think, trying to share a little bit of light or shed a bit of light on the fact that I think sometimes you're seen as like being able to juggle it all, but actually there's a whole loads of things that I think enable me to be able to do what I do, whether it's, my partner helps a lot in terms of childcare. And I think recognizing that, because I think sometimes when I look at other female leaders, I'm like, how are they doing it all? Even any leader, I'm like, how are they juggling it all? And I feel like it would be really helpful if people spoke a bit more about how they managed that, because it's not easy all the time.
No, and also, yes, we need to talk about the crap times more, don't we? Because, it's a wonderful thing about social media, and the most dangerous thing about it is you only see the highlights. Yeah, exactly. I would like you to talk about this more, actually, because I think it's such a important message, and I think that the decision-making stuff is what Amelia was talking about in her post. Really, was the I think you could help other people make a good decision. So
I mean, there is still like a big proportion of women that would never consider to start a business because of these issues. Exactly. And so to some extent, you've got to demonstrate and show what.
Exactly.
How you do it.
I want to talk about spirituality. Now, I always have to define what this is, because people think religion, and that's not what I mean. I'm talking about heart and soul connection with yourself, with others, with nature. Would you describe yourself as a spiritual person? How do you connect with the wider world?
I'm not sure if I'd describe myself as spiritual. However, when I was listening to other podcasts you have, and when you talked about that in the sense of like your connection to nature, like certainly for me, like, I mean, Cornwall as an example. I live in London. It's the least nature place ever. At some point I will leave. I would love at some point to, with obviously my family, go to, live somewhere like Cornwall. For me, it's either one of two extremes, either in the thick of it or properly out in the wild. And actually, when you kind of feel freest is when I'm, a few years ago, I kind of walked half of the Southwest Coastal Path, and it was probably the time that I felt most spiritually connected to myself and to the world around me. I took like a month off work, and I think I walked about 400 miles basically over that time, and I wish I could do the second half. I must do it at some point, but I didn't listen to any podcast. It was literally my own thoughts the whole way. I thought I'd had my headphones in the whole time, but I didn't. And it's amazing where you let your mind travel to when you are just immersed in nature, and literally have like the waves crashing on the right hand side and just walking along the path. It was incredibly kind of grounding, and I think it's what kind of really makes you reevaluate things. I think when you can get out. Having said that, when you're in the thick of growing a business, it can sometimes be hard to carve that time out. But for me, whether it's even in London, going out for a run or... Yeah,
so how do you... I mean, I think we're same as me, probably naturally a doer. And I think one thing I've learned as I've got older is to do less and try and be a bit more. So I've, created ways to create that space. How do you do that? In an average week.
An average week, yeah. I mean, running is my solace. I mean, as I said, I run lots of marathons, half marathons. Marathons are lonely things, but I do love the space it gives you. I mean, God, if you do a training run for 3 or 4 hours, like you see a lot of London, and there's lots of pockets of green space and open air that you can get to, and it's the best time I'll normally get my best thoughts is when I'm out running, and it's been something I've lent on consistently growing my business, like being able to have that as a stress reliever. And
so do you have ideas about the business when you're out running?
All the time, all the time, or it'll be like things that you're tussling with that you haven't quite solved yet in your mind, those will be the things. Or even if I'm trying to figure out how to give a bit of feedback to someone, I don't know how to like land it in a way that's like particularly like, kind or whatever. That'll be the time where I'll try and like, tease it out. But it is amazing for kind of sorting your thoughts out. In fact, it is the thing I do. Like we had a bad bit of news from a retailer on Friday, and like the first thing I did after that was like put my laces, tie my shoes on, and went for a run around the river, and it clears your head, and suddenly you're like duck off or water off a duck's back. And
am I right in saying that you've had coaching over the years? I mean, I wish I'd had some earlier, actually. I didn't, because a lot of people probably would like some coaching, probably don't know where to find the right person for them. How did you discover what kind of coaching was going to be good for you? Yeah, and how does it help you in the business?
Yeah, I've had a couple of coaches over time. I mean, I've generally found them through my peer network, asking, has anyone worked with anyone good? We worked with a brilliant woman called Karen, who used to be the kind of people director at Innocent. So I knew that she kind of got the food and drink industry, but also probably got the type of business that I was running. So that for me was a bit of a signal. But yeah, coaching I think has been a sort of, I haven't always had it. It's been like at different points in my journey. Back, I mentioned like 5 years ago, if you'd asked me if I enjoyed like leadership, I would have said no. That was when I started coaching, was to try and understand like what kind of leader was I. When I started to have a bit more of a team, I was like, I need to kind of figure out like how I'm going to stand up in front of these people and, I don't know, hopefully inspire them, if you like. And I didn't really know how to do that. I feel like entrepreneurship is either like The Apprentice, which I'm definitely not, like a hustler with like a suit and like shiny shoes, or it's like Richard Branson, and you're like, oh God, I don't know, I'm not him either. But,
I don't think many people are.
Yeah, and it's like I just didn't know what it was. Like I didn't feel like, you always feel like you need to be really inspiring the whole time, and I didn't really know how I could do that in a way that wasn't sort of standing on top of a I don't know, being kind of extrovert about it. I'm a bit more of an introvert. So I was trying to figure all this out. So that has been helpful, I think, in leadership. I think then the second bit, in coaching, and the second bit I think has been almost, it's this weird blurry line between therapy, isn't it? It sort of tries to help you understand, like, where are you at your best? And then when you're under pressure, what also comes out, and how do you therefore try and manage some of those tendencies which kind of come out when you don't really have the control, I guess. And that's, I think, part of leadership is trying to even yourself out a little bit.
I think, and there's two types of coach. Well, there's a lot more than that, but there's coaches who are really very much helping with business decisions, and then there's coaches that probably is more like therapists helping you change as an individual. So how are you changing at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, my current focus at the moment, I guess, is, like I said, I'm a bit of a doer, and I can be quite impatient. It's actually the thing that I might talk about later, but it's trying to pause more. Pause in the sense of a bit of what we spoke about, trying to pause to get a bit more, I'll call it, like, onto the balcony, so I can actually see and not just like be in the thick of the doing and firefighting, which I'm normally used to doing, but also even just quite practically, like when we're talking about something around the senior team, like not be the first one to jump in, not be the first one to throw my opinion in, like try and listen a bit more, be a bit more kind of reflective and open, I guess. That's probably what I can be impulsive, and I think that's something which I'm trying to kind of manage a little bit. It's got its good and its bad sides.
So jump forward another 10 years, what's going to be happening? What are you going to be doing? Oh,
yeah. I mean, where are we going to be in 10 years? Yeah, I mean, I hope Pip and Nut continues to be a brand that people love. I think there's a lot of love for the kind of brand that we are. And I hope that you'll find our products in lots of different places around the store. I hope you will see us expanding. I hope that we'll be able to do more good. We're working quite a lot on kind of sustainable agriculture. I really hope we make some progress on that. And specifically focus on nuts, because that's obviously our hero. From a charitable giving point of view, there's quite a lot of work we're doing at the moment on that. How can we kind of go further into help? We want to help people love food that loves them and the planet. That is our purpose. That we do that in our products, but we hope that we go beyond our products into kind of more of the wider society.
So what do you want to do that you haven't done yet in terms of the business side?
What do I want to do? I mean, for me, a big part of doing good with it is to expand our product portfolio. So I think it's trying to push into other avenues, I think, that I would like to explore. And then, internationally is a big part of it as well. We've barely even touched the side. So I'd hope that we can start to kind of do what we've done in the UK. What I found particularly exciting, you mentioned earlier that we became the number 2 brand in the UK for peanut butter. That's the category we started in. But what I find exciting about that underneath is that when I started the business, the majority of consumers weren't buying a product. They were buying a product, that contained palm oil. I think about 20% of the category was products predominantly processed with palm oil. Whereas now people are buying over 50% of the products that they buy that are branded are made completely naturally, and Pip and Nut has been a big part of that. So I hope in 10 years' time, at least where we started in our core category, that there are no products there that have palm oil, that actually the only products that consumers can find are those that are natural. And I guess that's what we're trying to do as we go category by category into other places, is try and look at how we can shift them to be more natural, more kind of made of real ingredients. So I hope that's a longer kind of impact I hope we have.
So you're 10 years into your entrepreneurial journey. One piece of advice you wish you'd had that you didn't at the time that you'd wish you'd had?
The advice I'd give myself right back at the start is, even when you're bored of something as a brand, your consumers definitely haven't even seen it. I've definitely fallen foul over the years of tinkering with the brand, both from a kind of look and feel, packaging, advertising, the comms messages. But, I've definitely learned the hard way that actually just consistency, keep saying the same thing over and over and over way in the simplest and cleanest way and distinctive way as possible. So, yeah, I think in terms of trying to get cut through with your messages, which is for us like palm oil, natural, just keep saying it the same way every single time.
But that's your over creative brain probably wanting to create
Shooting
all the time, isn't it?
Yeah. And that is the downside of being, I think, very creative, is that you are constantly, you're a bit bored of the thing that you put out last year, but actually the job to do is just do it again. and you'll save a lot of money, and you'll also get cut through.
Yes.
So that'd be the advice I'd give. Stop being a little bit so creative.
You're so similar to me on that. And is there any advice that you had that you've completely ignored, and that was a great thing to do?
Yeah, a bit of advice that a very old mentor gave to me was that a leader never has a bad day. I never really resonated with me. I mean, I think a big part of being a leader is that sometimes you do have a bad day, and you do sometimes need to share that with your team.
Yeah.
Not in a way that suddenly makes them all worry about like whether they're going to get paid at the end of the week or month, but more in the sense that like a problem shared as a problem halved mentality and vulnerability, which and I what I found about that bit of advice was that it almost made you think you had to just carry it all, the weight on your shoulders or all on you. And actually, to our point earlier, trust is a big part of it, and bringing people in on it and helping other people feel like they are there to help you solve the problems. That's what a team is, right? Yeah, you have each other's backs.
I think if there isn't vulnerability, I don't know if people can trust.
No.
If someone who exists never has a bad day, then that's not a real human being.
It's weird.
Is it? So how do you trust that robot? Because that's what they are. If they don't have a bad day, it's... No, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I mean, yes, you're right. You don't want to be bursting into tears every day. And some things you don't talk about until later on. I mean, I'm talking at a retail event this week, actually, and I'm going to talk about some stuff from 10 years ago that impacted them as customers that I never would have talked about for years afterwards because it was too raw. But I'm going to talk to them about this because they need to know. You know, no business doesn't have struggles, and if we wash everything under so no one sees it, then it's not real, is it?
Yeah, I think it shows actual strength to be able to say something like what you're about to, or to be actually honest about what something's going on, like as opposed to the other way, which perhaps could suggest weakness.
Yeah, there is a balance there, but like you said, you don't want to worry that people's wages aren't going to get paid. Although in the early days of our business, we didn't pay the wages on time a few times, I remember. Desperately trying to borrow the money.
Likewise.
Anyway, now you could have chosen vulnerability then as your chapter in the fourth bottom line, but I know you haven't. You've chosen patience, you just mentioned. So why is patience a characteristic that you're going to work on?
Yeah, I mean, it was a particular quote within it that is the idea that patience is waiting, not passively waiting. That is laziness, but to keep going when the going is hard and slow, that is patience. I just love that as a quote. The idea that sometimes patience seems like you're just sitting back waiting, but actually there's an agitated frustration that often you're sitting with when you have patience, and that's something sometimes I feel day to day at Pip and Nut. You know, you're always wanting to do a bit more, and that tension I think that you wrote about, which is that you naturally are often impatient when you're trying to solve bigger issues and challenges, but it's really kind of being able to sit with that sometimes and acknowledge that it does take time, and time is it's not to say that you're complacent or willing to take time on things, but that is sometimes the nature of the beast. So it is something which I have to tussle with, and probably have a bit of a tendency to compare and despair with people and then compare how we're doing versus others. And sometimes I need to get in my own lane and have patience with that and know that you're on your own journey, if you like. I
think sometimes you've just got to sit with things, haven't you? Not act, not do, just sit with it, and something will emerge. I wrote that chapter actually in the garden at home, and all the time I was writing it, our cat was sitting near the pond, wanting to get his paw on a fish in the pond. He sat there for about 2 hours. Never got the fish, of course, but we don't sit with things enough sometimes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's a good place to end. Thanks so much for coming on the fourth bottom line, and
Pleasure.
We look forward to seeing how the rest of your entrepreneurial journey expands and explores other avenues in the future. Pip, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. I really loved it.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the fourth bottom line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and do leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. Thank you so much for listening.